So clarification is a value. And I believe clarification strives for objectivity, but clarification doesn't fool itself by saying, I'm going to be perfectly objective. That's an impossibility because we're not gods, right? But we can strive towards objectivity, such as we know great journalists do and scientists. So, people who seek peace, conflict solutions, things like that. So clarificationism is a key part of this, but also the practical. And I was sure not to use the word pragmatic as opposed to practical because I don't like any of the implications of pragmatism. Pragmatism troubles me because it's hyper-contextual. It's hyper-contextual and relativistic. It ceases to have, I like the way one writing put it that I was reading, that it avoids any kind of metaphysics. And this to me is problematic because you can't live without having, in my opinion, you can't be objective without, or clear. You can't be clear or clarificationist without at least some semblance of metaphysics. I need to work out, I think, some of the nuanced ramifications of this. However, suffice it to say that to me, pragmatism doesn't appear to be concerned with a notion of reality. And if it's not concerned with a notion of reality, then what kind of proper standard does it really have? And it has no sense of properness. So I just find that it's at least objectivism strives for objectivity, where pragmatism to me doesn't really strive towards like properness. They say what works. I mean, define what we mean by works. And obviously, we'd have to have a long discussion about some of the things that William James and John Dewey, etc., say, and what criticisms have been lodged against them these days and in the past century, to have a more nuanced, educated conversation about that. But this is another thing I wanted to talk to you about, as a bug flew on me. Something that interests me both personally and aesthetically about talking from where we are as opposed to trying to be authorities on something. I know that a lot of people like to talk as if they can make these grand generalizations about life. And I mean, this comes back to the whole concept of practical clarificationism, is that we can't quite do that, though we can perhaps find useful guidelines in given periods of time that we can ever clarify and ever improve. So that's part of it. The other part, right? So I do choose the word practical, and as opposed to pragmatic. Now, with speaking about practicality, to me, the significance is that I'm thinking about how it's more important than things that are so-called esoteric. Not to say that there isn't a time and place and significance, let's say, to ideas that people might call academic or highly abstract or aesthetic. But I would argue that there are things which perhaps are more connected to living the ever-improving life and things that are not so tied to that. Though I owe you examples, and off the top of my head, I don't quite have them yet off the top of my head. But I'm just trying to show you where I'm thinking, at least. Now I see, if I rewatch this, I'll have a good idea of something to build up on. But so what's practical? I mean, really it comes back to, I believe ethically our purpose is to thrive and to help each other thrive, and thus to ever improve. So in terms of what's practical, as I understand it, what is in fact helping my life do that? What am I doing? What am I offering that offers myself life improvement and or others life improvement? And in some way, shape, or form, and if it's not, I might think that's a sort of more literally esoteric kind of thing, or less practical. Is there a time for the less practical or the non-practical? I mean, yeah, there's a time, to escape. Of course, even that is practical. Or a time not to concern yourself with what's practical. Although even that, if you allot a proper amount of time to it, a non-destructive time to it, is practical. So I do, if my mom sees this, she might be amused, because for a long time in my life, I was actually, I had these oppositions to that which is referred to as practical. And part of it is, I've spent the last several years in college, and before that, I had a lot of intellectual interests that just didn't touch on the concept of practicality. Practicality is just something I haven't thought about until more recently. You could say, ironically, either now that I finally have the mental space to think about it, now that I'm not studying for tests, and now that I don't work a job that I despise, those are factors. Number three, if we're going to be accurate, just when I was younger, I was more interested in certain fundamental questions that just didn't yet touch on that concept of what is practical. Just the word, when I even say concept, I mean the word. I didn't really think about practical or non-practical. Or if I heard it, it wasn't as interesting to me as like the word philosophy or the word art or the word politics or, fundamentals. But now I would view concern with practicality as important and fundamental. So that's why I use the term practical clarificationism, because I believe that we have to strive towards ever clarifying things. As opposed to saying either that we are objective or non-objective. We strive to be objective, and if we do so, we gain more and more clarity, hopefully. And the purpose is practical. That is to say, it helps us improve our lives, hopefully, and the lives of others, and that, to live the ever-improving life. I think that's the purpose of philosophy at the end of the day, is to help us live the good life, or the ever-improving life is a term I prefer, just like I enjoy more ever-clarification or clarificationism. So just to sort of share with you one element of where I am, that's it. Practical clarificationism.